what does the future hold for the Michigan Wolverines? Because it's obvious now, like, pivoting is a part of life, and pivoting is inevitable in college football. Now, how you pivot and what you pivot from is what dictates future success. Now, it hasn't happened yet, but there's a lot of smoke with Jim Harbaugh leaving to the NFL. That smoke continued with Jim Harbaugh interviewing with the LA Chargers. And we said this in a one-off video yesterday. I'm going to say it again right now. This is a situation where you can't blame anybody. And I don't think the good people in Ann Arbor do blame anybody. I think they feel a ton of gratitude towards Jim Harbaugh. But in this situation, like, if you're the Chargers, if you're just an NFL front office, you're supposed to hire the very best coach you can find. And Jim Harbaugh is 44-19-1 as an NFL head coach. He was, as one of y'all put so eloquently in the comment section, a power outage away from winning a Super Bowl over his brother. Like, you have to believe that the competitor that Jim Harbaugh is as well, he probably wants to conquer that mountain. He probably wants to get to the top of the greatest pinnacle in the game of football, which is winning a Super Bowl. And being so close to having done it, he probably wants to get that accomplished. I don't think that's unfair to assume that. So the NFL, you got to hire good coaches. Jim Harbaugh, given his credentials and given his resume, probably fits that bill. And again, for Jim Harbaugh, being so close and then also having conquered the mountain at Michigan already. And that's not to say that he, has his work done at Michigan and there's no reason for him to come back, because I actually have some thoughts on that here in a second as well. But like, if you're Jim Harbaugh, you conquered it. You conquered it. You can conquer it again, but you feel like, hey, what I came here to do, which is to bring Michigan football back to the pinnacle of college football, back to the mountaintop, I've done it. And so if I leave knowing that I did all that I could and I accomplished the ultimate goal, the ultimate mission. So again, if you're a Michigan fan, I think you can list a ton of pros as to why Jim Harbaugh should come back. Like, I think it's fair to argue the list of pros for Jim Harbaugh coming back to Michigan is arguably longer than the NFL. Now, again, that's probably depending on who you ask, but the job security at Michigan, second to none. The fact that he's going to get a new contract, you have to believe he is going to get paid. Nothing that Jim Harbaugh is going to be wanting for when it comes to getting a new contract from Michigan. In terms of the roster they have coming back next year, yes, you lose J.J. McCarthy to the NFL, and we'll discuss that, but like, I think the roster they have in place is built to compete for a Big Ten championship yet again, compete for a national championship yet again. Now, I understand there's this thought around, the NCAA and how tough they might make it on Jim Harbaugh and all that. I don't think that's unfair. But I think the real thing that's tough to gauge for Michigan is you're dealing with the unquantifiable. And what I mean by that is, if you're listing out the pros and cons, again, there might be more pros on the Michigan list for staying. But you talk about the pros for the NFL, and that one pro with the opportunity to win a Super Bowl, you don't know how much value he's putting on that. And that might be the end-all, be-all. So if Jim Harbaugh does eventually decide, hey, I want to go and be the head coach for the Chargers, or whoever you want to insert there as to who he could be the next head coach for. I think that search, and I use search in air quotes there for those of y'all listening on podcast, that is a 30-second search. And I use that timeline of 30 seconds because I'm assuming that's how long it takes for you to walk down to Sharon Moore's office and tell him, hey, good news, you're our next head coach. Appreciate you so much. Now, there's probably a contract discussion to be had there, but the reason why Sharon Moore is your guy and you don't even look outside of those four walls is because Michigan, the way that they've done things, they have taken the long route to winning a national championship. And what I mean by that is they haven't done it with top 3 classes. They haven't done it with portaling in a bunch of 5 stars. Like, yes, they've used the portal. Yes, they've recruited well, but they have built this thing methodically and systematically, and it's been unique to Michigan. They have a systematic way of doing things that is specific to what they do in-house in Ann Arbor. And what I want to make sure we say is, whenever you have something that's unique to your building and you have a certain way of doing things that's been working, the worst thing you could do is bring in someone from the outside and interrupt that. You bring in someone new to try and, lead the thing forward, like you're messing with a Jenga tower that I don't know that you really want to mess with, because again, you just won a national championship. So Sharon Moore, one, understands that, would keep that at cruising altitude, has been a part of this long enough to know how it works and to keep it working how it works. But also, let's not overlook this. He got some good reps as a head coach this year, right? I mean, they beat Ohio State with him as the head coach. Now, I understand. Being a head coach on game day is different than being a head coach every other day of the year. But even with that being said, I think he is at a place where whether Michigan makes him the next head coach or not, it is a matter of time before Sherrone Moore gets the whistle as the head man somewhere in the country. It might as well be somewhere that it works, somewhere that he's loved, and somewhere that's already rolling right now. So I don't think it's a long search. I think Sherrone Moore is your guy should Jim Harbaugh leave for the NFL. So that's the potential pivot. We'll see what happens. Of course, we're going to talk about it as we move forward here, moving into the Jim Harbaugh interview phase of our year. Now, an unavoidable pivot here, and this has already gone final, J.J. McCarthy is leaving for the NFL. More power to him. There were some thoughts that maybe coming back to school could be good for him. I was one of those individuals, but I think with him leaving for the NFL, I want to make sure that we get this out there. I don't think this was like a flippant decision for J.J. McCarthy. I don't think this was him saying, I think this is right for me today. I don't think he checked the vibes and the vibes said NFL, or he shook the magic 8 ball and it said today's the day to go to the NFL. I think this was a thing where he thought it through, and I truly believe that he either got feedback or talked to people that he trusts that believe he will be an early round NFL draft pick. Now, what does early mean? To be determined, but I think that he has some confidence he'll go early. Also, I would say, if you don't believe in J.J. McCarthy as an NFL prospect, I would ask you to look at what Jim Harbaugh has said about him and who Jim Harbaugh has coached. Jim Harbaugh, 1, been around some pretty good NFL quarterbacks as an NFL head coach. 2, has been around future NFL quarterbacks at the collegiate ranks, Josh Johnson at San Diego, and probably most notably Andrew Luck at Stanford. Jim Harbaugh putting J.J. McCarthy in the category of an Andrew Luck, I think probably holds some weight because Jim Harbaugh knows what he's talking about. So that's kind of where the thing stands with J.J. McCarthy and his NFL aspirations. But again, we're a college football show, so what does this mean for Michigan? I think the ultimate thought has to be, do you trust who's already in-house, and that would probably be Alex Orji, or do you think you got to go get someone from the portal? Now, there's no way for me to gauge exactly how they feel about Alex Orji, but for me, I would love to see Michigan go to the portal and get a proven commodity. And the reason why I say that is just what we said about Jim Harbaugh and a reason why he maybe would come back, or maybe a reason to come back. That roster, man, they got some dudes ready to win now. Donovan Edwards announcing yesterday he's coming back. Kenneth Grant, he'll be back. Colston Loveland, he'll be back. There's a lot of pieces now, if you're Michigan, to make another run at this thing. And a big part of that, you have to believe, is going to be having a sure thing at quarterback. If I had to predict the future, I would say it as a blanket statement like this. I think Jim Harbaugh leaves for the NFL, Sherrone Moore becomes the next head coach. At the quarterback position, I think they're too stacked right now to not go to the portal and get a sure thing. Now, is that Talia Tagovailoa? That'd be my first choice. If it's not him, if for whatever reason goes to the NFL or he doesn't get the waiver, I would look pretty closely at Will Rogers. So all that's to say, portal QB, new head coach, same Michigan, roll party roll. The vibes are still high in Ann Arbor. And even with the change at quarterback, even with the change at head coach, potentially, I think Michigan will still be a force in the Big Ten and still be a force when it comes to that playoff picture. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.